You're saying it one-sided. You're not telling the other side of the story on what they're doing either. You're not saying what Hamas did. You're not saying what they did.
What did Hamas do?
I mean, from day one, when you see the rapes and the videos, we've all seen it. This isn't something
What rapes and videos?
But stay on this here if you want to continue with this.
But what rapes and videos?
But my concern when you're saying Israel's doing it, you're saying the other side isn't doing anything?
No, but I'm asking. No, there was no rapes during October 7th. They've shown no rapes from October 7th. They showed no beheaded babies. All that was all bullshit.
I'll send you stuff. No, there's plenty of stories. It's not all of them.
The Israeli articles that I saw recently said that there was only 2 babies killed. One was shot by a bullet and the other one died in a hospital. There was no babies in ovens. There's no beheaded babies. All that was all bullshit.
All right, guys, something unexpected just happened on Valuetainment. Patrick Bet David found himself on the defensive, and not against a seasoned journalist or political analyst, but against Dan Bilzerian. And the way that conversation unfolded caught a lot of people off guard. Dan walked into the studio and challenged Patrick's position on Palestine in a way that shifted the energy of the entire room. What started as a typical back and forth quickly turned into a tense exchange where Patrick struggled to maintain control of the narrative. The usual confident rhythm he brings to debates didn't quite land this time. Some of the familiar lines, the "we've all seen the videos" framing, the broader generalizations, didn't hold up under direct questioning. And for a moment, you could see the discomfort. The dynamic flipped. Instead of Patrick guiding the conversation, he was responding to it. Now, I'm not saying one side won in a simple scoreboard sense, but what made this moment stand out is that Dan forced Patrick to confront inconsistencies in real time. And when that happens live without edits or time to recalibrate, it's revealing. Stick around until the very end because I'm going to break down exactly how Dan structured his questions, where Patrick's argument started to unravel, and why some viewers are calling this one of the most surprising moments in Valuetainment history. But before we jump in, now where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to see how global this conversation is reaching. I might even shout a few of you out in the next video. And if you appreciate deep breakdowns like this, where we analyze the exchange instead of just reacting to it, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, no, every country, the big ones all have lobbyists. They all have lobbying that they're doing.
Not in the U.S. They're registered as foreign entities.
Right. I mean, if you're talking about, are you going to the dual citizenship part with Israel, Israel?
That's another problem is a lot of our politicians have far more allegiance to Israel than they do the United States. I mean, that's a whole nother issue as well.
Do you know why they did the dual citizenship? Do you know the history behind why they did the dual citizenship?
What do you mean?
Like, so the whole concept of dual citizenship was because when Israel became a, country again, they didn't want the people from here who wanted to go back to Israel that didn't have a motivation to go if they were going to lose their citizenship here. So that was the reason why they did it. It was kind of like, okay, you're your own country. We kind of need some of you guys to move over there to help the country out. Yeah, but I'm not going to go. Why are you not going to go? Am I going to lose my citizenship here? But you are. I mean, we don't do that. Every other country, I don't want to lose my citizenship. Well, okay, how about if we do this? How about if we allow you, just Israel, to go back to your country, you won't lose your citizenship? That was the arrangement at the beginning why they did it that way.
No, look, I get it. I have 3 citizenships. You know what I mean? I think it's okay. I think
what's the third one? I know Armenia, but what's the
St. Kitts?
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't have an issue with dual citizenship. My issue is when somebody is holding a U.S. office and they are putting a foreign nation's interest before America's interest, and they are favoring that other country. And so that to me is treason. Like when you are a U.S. government official, your motivation should be to do things in the best interest of the government that you are representing, not 100%. Some other fucking foreign country. And that's the problem.
Okay, so, but go through it. So what is the solution? Meaning, if Israel's the enemy, then if let's just say you don't do anything and everybody in the Middle East unites to take out Israel, do you think the Middle East is better without Israel? And do you think the world's a safer place without Israel?
100%. It's not even close.
Okay, tell me why. Why do you think?
Give me an argument otherwise, please. But give me one argument why the world would be better off with Israel. Let's just start with that. One thing. Give me one thing.
Have you ever lived in the Middle East?
No.
I lived there for 10.5 years. It's a very, it's not as like here. You can sit here, you can be an atheist, you can be an agnostic, I can be a Christian, he can be a Jew, he can be an LDS, Muslim, no problem. We can coexist here. You can do that in Israel. You can do that.
I mean, not really. They're operating apartheid right now. So everybody's not living equally.
Not at the level of Iran. Not at the level of what Iran is doing. I mean, in Iran, if you're thinking what Israel is doing out of control, do you know how much money Khamenei's families made? Do you know how much money they've taken? They have 200.
I've never been to Iran, but I've been to Dubai. I've been to Saudi. Like I've been to UAE. So like, and they're all Muslim. They seem to be operating fine.
I would say Iran's slightly different than. But go back to it. So okay, so you think the Middle East and the world would be a better place if Israel didn't exist?
Yes.
Okay.
Israel's committed, so many terrorist attacks. They're stealing land right now. They're operating in apartheid. They're currently committing a genocide on Palestinians. Like, do you believe in the genocide they're committing?
I think they're fighting for themselves and they're defending themselves.
Do you think that's defense?
Well,
when 1,200 people died, and of which the 1,200 you've killed and admitted that you've killed a lot during, your Hannibal.
I will tell you this. The part I question where people who are Jewish can't stand when I say this, I don't know how you, Netanyahu, claim you have the best intelligence in the world, Mossad, and you didn't know that on October 7th they're attacking.
They knew about it. They didn't. They wanted it to happen, so they had a reason to take that. Yeah, they wanted a reason to take the land.
I totally get it.
And they killed their own citizens. And they claimed that all these people got. That was bullshit. They claimed beheaded babies. That was bullshit. Everything that they said was a fucking complete. Not only was it a lie, but they committed all those atrocities themselves to the Palestinians and been caught doing it. In fact, they just got caught gang Palestinians. How many babies have they killed? All the things that they accuse the Palestinians of or Hamas of or whatever, they're guilty of 100-fold themselves. And they've been doing that. Like October 7th wasn't the start of this. Like the start of this was Nakba. They've done so many different.
Disagree. Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah, so I mean, this is not like, it's not like October 7th is like, it's all of a sudden they just came over there unsolicited and just killed people. Like they have been killing Palestinians for years and years, operating two sets of justice. It's like they have the justice for the Palestinians and the justice for the Israelis. And if you read the Talmud, like, if you're not Jewish, you're basically not a human. You're like, like cattle. If a Jew is killed by, somebody that's not Jewish, then it's the death penalty. If a Jew kills somebody that's not a Jew, then, you can't kill them. It's not the death penalty. Like they literally like segregate in their Bible.
They're very protective of themselves. I don't think anybody can debate that. I don't think it's a.
Well, it's not the problem isn't that they're protective of themselves. The problem comes when you think that you're better than other people and you think it's okay to lie to anybody that's not a Jew. You think it's okay to steal from people that are not a Jew. You have two sets of standards. The problem with that is it allows you to rationalize anything, right? And human beings are generally self-serving creatures. So if your fundamental religious belief system allows you to operate in such a way that you believe there isn't consequences to stealing from other people, killing other people, raping, kids that are under 9 years old, like if you think those things are okay, then, how are you going to operate? Because to me, like my moral code keeps me on track.
I don't think that's what it is. I don't think it's because you're saying it one-sided. You're not telling the other side of the story of what they're doing either. You're not saying what Hamas did. You're not saying what they did.
What did Hamas do?
I mean, from day one, when you see the rapes and the videos, we've all seen it. This isn't something
what rapes and videos?
But stay on this here if you want to continue with this.
But what rapes and videos?
But my concern when you're saying Israel's doing it, you're saying the other side isn't doing anything?
No, but I'm asking. No, there was no rapes during October 7th. They've shown no rapes from October 7th. They showed no beheaded babies. All that was bullshit.
I'll send you stuff. No, there's plenty of stories. It's not all of them.
The Israeli articles that I saw recently said that there was only 2 babies killed. One was shot by a bullet and the other one died in a hospital. There was no babies in ovens. There was no beheaded babies. All that was all bullshit.
Watching Patrick bet David in that debate feels less like watching someone confidently defend a position, and more like watching someone trying to stabilize an argument that keeps slipping out of alignment. He returns again and again to the same refrains. You're being one-sided. What about Hamas? We've all seen the videos. The repetition is noticeable, and when repetition replaces documentation, it raises questions. The tension isn't that Patrick lacks intelligence. He's clearly articulate and experienced in debate. The issue is that his framing becomes selective the moment the discussion moves into uncomfortable territory. He presents himself as balanced, but his posture consistently leans toward defending Israel while minimizing or sidelining Palestinian suffering. That imbalance becomes the core friction point. When Patrick insists that critics aren't presenting the other side, it overlooks something obvious. Coverage of Hamas's October 7th attacks has been extensive across global media. The condemnation of those attacks has been widespread. The argument Dan seems to be making isn't that Hamas should be excused. It's that the broader historical and political context matters. Decades of occupation, settlement expansion, displacement, and human rights criticisms are part of the conversation whether one agrees with the framing or not. Patrick frequently responds to criticism of Israeli policy by redirecting to Hamas. That rhetorical move creates a binary. Either you condemn Hamas unequivocally and focus there, or you're implicitly defending them. But that binary collapses under scrutiny. It is possible to condemn Hamas's violence while also questioning Israeli government actions. Those two positions are not mutually exclusive. The debate becomes particularly revealing when Dan begins asking specific questions about evidence. References to atrocity claims, source verification, and official statements. Patrick responds with generalized assertions. We've all seen it. There are videos. I'll send you something. In a structured debate, broad claims without citation weaken credibility. If evidence exists, naming it strengthens the case. Without specifics, the argument begins to rely on assumed consensus rather than documented sourcing. Dan shifts the conversation towards structural issues, occupation policies, dual legal systems in the West Bank, international human rights reporting, and UN criticisms. Whether one agrees with every characterization or not, these are documented areas of international debate. Patrick largely reframes them as security measures tied to self-defense. Here's where proportionality becomes central. Israel is a highly militarized state with advanced weaponry and strong international backing. Gaza, by contrast, has faced years of blockade and resource constraints. Critics argue that power asymmetry changes how self-defense is evaluated under international law. Supporters of Israel argue that security threats justify strong responses. That's the crux of the dispute. But Patrick doesn't deeply engage that asymmetry argument. He defaults to the language of defense. The discussion of civilian casualties and infrastructure damage adds another layer. International organizations have issued varying assessments, some using extremely strong language about potential war crimes or disproportionate force. Those reports are contested politically, but they exist. Patrick largely avoids addressing them directly. The "what about Hamas" pivot continues throughout. The implication becomes that Palestinian civilians and Hamas are indistinguishable in strategic analysis. That framing is controversial because it risks collapsing a population into a governing militant group. Dan's counterpoint seems to be that collective punishment and group conflation undermine moral clarity. Another flashpoint in the debate is the issue of lobbying influence and dual citizenship. Dan raises concerns about foreign policy alignment and political incentives. This area requires extreme caution. It is legitimate to discuss lobbying power and campaign finance structures, including groups like AIPAC, as part of American politics. However, discussions about dual loyalty or collective influence can easily veer into dangerous generalizations. The responsible way to approach it is to focus on institutional mechanisms, not ethnic or religious identity. Patrick responds to that segment by offering historical context rather than engaging the underlying ethical concern Dan raises. The disconnect shows they are debating different questions, one structural, one defensive. What becomes noticeable over time is Patrick's caution. He avoids strong, direct criticism of Israeli leadership while also not fully endorsing every action. He positions himself as balanced, but the balance feels guarded. Dan, by contrast, speaks more bluntly. Whether that bluntness is persuasive or not depends on the viewer, but it reads as conviction. The accusation that Patrick is protecting brand relationships or business interests is speculative, but the perception that he avoids risk in his stance contributes to the impression of hesitancy. In politically charged discussions, audiences tend to sense when someone is calibrating for optics rather than fully engaging substance. By the end of the exchange, Patrick's argument relies heavily on repetition, defense framing, Hamas references, and general claims of one-sidedness. Dan's argument relies more on structural critique and historical grievances. Neither side fully resolves the conflict, but one appears more willing to challenge institutional power directly. The most telling aspect isn't that Dan wins. It's that Patrick never fully engages the strongest critiques presented. He sidesteps proportionality, avoids deep engagement with human rights reports, and reframes structural concerns as security issues without unpacking them. The result is an argument that feels incomplete. You don't have to agree with every point Dan makes to recognize that the debate exposed tension in Patrick's framing. And you don't have to side with Patrick to acknowledge that the Israel-Palestine conflict is extraordinarily complex. But if someone positions themselves as fact-driven and balanced, then the expectation is comprehensive engagement with uncomfortable facts, not selective emphasis. That's why the debate resonates. It's less about who raised their voice louder and more about who confronted the hardest questions head-on.